How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. Glad to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. You can text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777 and get all the links you need to know about. Now, I've got to jump straight in because occasionally, this is why I'm glad I have the show, because I can serve as my own news editor and decide what the most important story is. And you may have a story you think today is the most important story. And I actually think this is the most important story in America today, and it's not going to get any attention. It's not going to get attention because it seems like it's a small story in one region of the country, but it's actually a nationwide phenomenon. And I don't care where you are, I need you to hear me. This is about Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm not even on the radio in Philadelphia, and this is a huge story with nationwide implications, and it's brought to us by the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting and Analysis, CAMRA. CAMRA has been wondering why there's been such a massive surge in anti-Semitism in the Philadelphia area, particularly among the young. And they have produced a report. And I want to talk to you about the school district of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, because documents that CAMRA has uncovered show sweeping curriculum changes that have been driven by ideology. And as you know, I'm a regular critic of a lot of public school education in this country, particularly teacher union-driven education choices in blue states, because they elevate ideology and indoctrination over education. And what we're seeing in Philadelphia is how that intentional indoctrination is increasing not just anti-Semitism rapidly in Philadelphia among the young, but also a sense of victimhood. Let me read you from CAMRA's findings. If you subscribe to my daily email, if you text Eric to 33777, the very first link, you'll see the link to this. The school district of Pennsylvania reshaped its entire social studies curriculum from a chronological survey of history to themes that focus on the three sins of Western civilization: capitalism, racism, and settler colonialism. It excluded world-shaping events like the Enlightenment, the French Revolution, both world wars, and the Cold War. It excluded education on the Holocaust and elevated Islamic history, downplaying the Islamic conquests. Lessons included an excerpt from Sharia law highlighting its promotion of equitable financial transactions without adding context to what that meant. In Philadelphia public schools, students are being taught that the Islamic concept of jihad is the equivalent of the Western just war theory. A lesson encouraged students to conclude that the United States and Israel are the key perpetrators of terrorism on the planet. The move toward an anti-racist decolonizing curriculum encouraged teachers to attack Israel, Zionism, and the United States in their classrooms and on social media when communicating with students. Now, before you think this is exaggerated, CAMRA has the receipts. They don't just have the receipts. Here's what they also have: documentation that Jewish students in Philadelphia public schools were taunted with Nazi salutes, swastika graffiti, Students were pressured by teachers to say Free Palestine. A principal praised students for coming to the school in a costume as a quote-unquote Palestinian freedom fighter, as a member of Hamas, essentially. This is all happening in the Philadelphia public schools. They are taught to unsettle themselves, to decolonize. One teacher put up a picture on her social media saying, when people ask me why I teach, it's always this, and she's holding up Palestinian flags. A student complained in a Title VII complaint about vicious hostility in the public schools. A teacher within the school district of Pennsylvania on a social media post put up this schedule: 8:15 circle, 8:45 library planning, 9:45 strong evidence for letters, 10:45 Black Power and Palestine, 11:45 lunch, 12:15 gym, 1:15 math or English, and 2:15 p.m. Malcolm X. Camera has the documentation of the curriculum. They've got it on their website. Provide students with the definition of intersectionality. Intersectionality refers to the simultaneous experience of categorical and hierarchical classifications, including but not limited to race, class, gender, sexuality, and nationality. It also refers to the fact that what is often perceived as disparate forms of oppression, like racism, classism, sexism, and xenophobia, are actually mutually dependent and intersecting in nature, and together they compose a unified system of oppression. Thus, the privileges we enjoy and the discrimination we face are a product of our unique positioning in society as determined by class classifiers or social classifiers. Use the intersectional chart. Provide the history of intersectionality to highlight the importance of Black women to thinking on intersectionality. The term intersectionality was popularized in 1989 by critical legal and race scholar Kimberly Williams Crenshaw. Crenshaw reviewed legal proceedings to illustrate how it is the intersection of race and gender shape what Black men and women experience in the legal system. She, by the way, is an ardent, committed leftist. This is indoctrination. This is not education. This is indoctrination. And the kids who are coming out of Philadelphia public schools are increasingly anti-Semitic, increasingly hate the free market, increasingly embrace communism, and increasingly cannot read, write, or do arithmetic. It's not just happening in Philadelphia. Camera just happens to have the receipts in Philadelphia. Why? Because of the rapid increase in anti-Semitism coming out of Philadelphia public schools. Jewish students literally were treated to Nazi salutes by other students in classrooms. Teachers have literally in classrooms described Israel as a colonizer project in the Middle East, and colonialization is bad. Teachers have spent time discussing freeing Palestinians from Jewish rule in the classroom in Philadelphia. If you can get your kids out of public school, you really should at this point in those states. Contrast the Philadelphia public school system with Mississippi. Philadelphia spends 2 to 3 times as much per student in the classroom as what the state of Mississippi does. And the poorest counties in Mississippi are getting better results on standardized tests for reading and math than the kids in Philadelphia public schools are. When you take into account race, a Black child in 3rd grade in Mississippi is far more likely to read at grade level and do math at grade level than a Black child in the inner city in Philadelphia is. But the Black child in the inner city of Philadelphia is far more likely to hate Jews. I want you to think about that. That is not hyperbole. That is the research. This is not Eric Erickson's opinion. This is the research. And the whole reason the research exists is because of what has been noticed by a lot of groups in Philadelphia and the outcomes of students there. Let me say this again. A poor Black child in Mississippi, where the school system spends less than half of what the Philadelphia school system spends on kids, That poor black child in Mississippi is more likely to read and write at grade level than the poor black student in Philadelphia. But the poor black student in Philadelphia is more likely to recognize that Jews are a problem. It is because in Philadelphia they made a choice. They don't teach history chronologically. They teach it by the themes, and the themes are why Western civilization is bad, why it is racist, why settler colonialism is bad, and why capitalism is bad. That is what the students in Philadelphia are being taught. And it's not just Philadelphia. It is around the country in urban enclaves run by progressives where they are indoctrinating, not educating. They don't care that your kid can't read or write. They'll blame it on settler colonialism and systemic racism. And it's the good white progressives and the teachers' unions who are refusing to care that your kids can't read or write. It happened in San Francisco, you will recall, where the teachers' unions are striking and actively discouraging parents from getting their kids tutoring help. It happened there, and the parents had enough, and they threw out a bunch of school board members and set about reform. And the teachers' unions are now striking against the changes the local school board is trying to make in San Francisco because the teachers' unions would prefer that kids be dumb, malleable, and indoctrinated into hating the West than actually learn to read, write, and do math. In states with strong teachers' unions, increasingly kids are failing the basics and learning to hate their fellow Americans. The teachers' unions are cesspools of hate at this point in those states. In states with weak teachers' unions, which are most of the right-to-work states in the South in particular, the kids' educational outcomes are outperforming the kids in the other states, and those kids are also less likely to hate people based on their race or ethnicity. This should be a national story. This should be the biggest story of the day. This exposure, this documented exposure. These are not opinions. They've got the receipts. They've got the curriculum. They've got the screenshots of what the teachers are putting up on social media. They've got the screenshots of what the teachers are teaching in the classroom. They've got the comments of the students in the classes who are being told to spend time during class thinking about freeing the Palestinians, thinking about how the United States is a perpetrator of terrorism in the world. They're actively being taught to hate their country. Public schools, particularly in blue states, are becoming incubators of anti-American indoctrination. And I know many people can't afford to go to private schools. And frankly, I think if you've got conservative billionaires out there, of which there are many, y'all should be funding in these areas competing private schools that open the doors to anyone who can get there, where you're teaching them classical Christian education, where you're teaching them not Singapore math, but real math, not Common Core reading, but actual reading and phonics like they're doing in the southern states. You know, the new push now, the Common Core tie-in to science is now to tell kids that theorizing, hypothesizing, and testing is less important than consensus-based science. Think about that. Consensus-based science is the new trend in these schools in Common Core. Consensus-based. Science has never been consensus-based. Science is something real where you test your hypotheses and see what works and doesn't. And just because there's a consensus doesn't mean the consensus is right. Look at transgenderism, where now the American Medical Association, the Plastic Surgeons of America, and the like are running away from transgenderism because of lawsuits. They bought into the consensus that it was a real thing, and now they're willing to recognize actually it's a mental illness issue. The left is at war for your child's mind. You cannot sit on the sidelines. You cannot sit on the sidelines as the left gives up on teaching your children how to function in the world, and instead they're teaching your children how to hate in the world. You cannot let them win on this issue. You cannot let the left win. And it's happening across the country. You've got to be mindful of it. And parents, you owe it to your child, if you can't get out of public school, to be actively engaged in what they are learning in public schools. Remember, when so many of you, when your kids were home during COVID, watching on Zoom, you were aghast at what they were and were not learning in school, and you rose up. You've got to do it and keep doing it. In Pennsylvania, they're turning children into little Nazis. By design, it is their intention, and they will come for your kids in your states too, if they can.
This episode is brought to you by Glorify, the #1 Christian daily devotion app. Look, I have struggled forever, including this very year, doing a daily devotion, trying to focus on God's Word. That's why I teach Sunday school, because I know I've got to be in the Word every week studying. And the Glorify app is a great way for you to stay focused on your relationship with God. Just 5 minutes in the car, 10 minutes on a walk, a moment before the day gets out of control. Millions of people use Glorify, and I completely understand why. It's scripture and truth when you need it. And right now, you can get full access to Glorify for just $29.99 the entire year. That's Glorify's lowest price ever. When you download the Glorify app now at glorify-app.com/Eric, E-R-I-C-K. Feel closer to God this year with Glorify. Get full access all year for $29.99 at glorify-app.com/Eric. That's glorify-app.com/Eric.
Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here, and the phone number is 877-973-7425 should you wish to be on the program. I want to give a kind word towards Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska. He's retiring from Congress this year. He and I don't always see eye to eye, but we have had some enjoyable conversations in the past few weeks, including the other night about the tariffs. In fact, he called me when the House Republican leaders were trying to get him to vote for the tariffs, to say they were offering him all sorts of deals. And that has always philosophically been one of the problems with the implementation of tariffs. And we're seeing it in real time here, in that the Republican leaders were willing to carve out sweetheart deals for Don Bacon's district in Nebraska that would give his district a competitive advantage over other congressional districts if he voted in favor of the tariffs. One of the chief issues with tariffs is how tariffs actually cause an increase in lobbying, increase in donations to members of Congress, increases in regulations, and increases in corruption because of people being willing to carve things up. And to his credit, Don Bacon refused to go along. And 6 Republicans have now voted with the Democrats to pass a measure that would kill the tariffs on Canada. It's not going to pass in the United States Senate, I'm afraid, and a lot of Republicans simply did not want to vote. 2/3 of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives actually are opposed to the tariffs intellectually, but they don't want to oppose the president because they know he would do primary challenges, which the president has threatened to do on these 6. 5 of the 6, I believe, aren't running again, and Thomas Massie is being challenged already, so he had nothing to lose. Tariffs are not just bad policy, they're deeply corrupting, and we're seeing that in real time, the way the Republicans in Congress are trying to twist arms and carve deals to protect the tariffs. The tariffs are a bad idea. Incogni is a great idea. Incogni is INCOGNI, incogni.com/Eric. If you go to incogni.com/Eric, Incogni will protect your privacy online. You know, insurance brokers, when you fill out a claim for insurance or want an insurance, life insurance or something, they will go online and pay the data brokers to get all the information they can on you to see how they should set rates on you. Incogni makes you incognito online. They're your representative. They go to the data brokers and demand that they take down your information. They send letters to them on your behalf, and they are persistent following up on sites that refuse, and they pressure them with legal means to get your information offline. It also helps with spam calls and the extended warranty calls and protecting your and your family's privacy. In fact, some of these sites even connect you to your kids and can pull up pictures of your kids online like they did to me. That's why I use Incogni. Incogni.com/Eric. INCOGNI. Incogni.com/Eric. Save 60%. Well, the Democratic donor class has managed to do it again. They have managed to put their party on the wrong side of another 80-20 issue. And in this case, it might actually be a 90-10 issue. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson here. You can call in 877-973-7425. Talking about voter ID. When congressmen go to vote, they have to put in a photo ID into a little box It slides into the box like a debit card into an ATM machine, activates, and they can push yay or nay. It's a photo ID they have to use. When you go to cash a check, you need a photo ID. You go buy a gun, which is your constitutional right to do. You have to have photo ID. When you go into the courthouse, typically you got to have photo ID. John Ossoff, the U.S. Senator from Georgia, recently had an event, and you had to have photo ID to get into his event. And in the event, John Ossoff blasted having photo ID to vote, which we do here in Georgia, and actually a number of states do, and voting has gone up even among minorities. Essentially, the fine folks on the left have decided that non-white male voters are too stupid to figure out how to vote in this country. Some Democratic congresswoman in Pennsylvania is claiming that 70-80% of Pennsylvania voters don't have a real ID, which is kind of nonsense. They've been issuing real IDs in Pennsylvania now for almost, 5-6 years. As people get new driver's licenses, they're real ID compliant. The idea that most of them don't is nonsense. Now, I will tell you in fairness, and what gets drowned out of the debate is some Republicans do have one concern about the SAVE Act, that it is a little bit too restrictive in proof of citizenship to vote when you want to go register to vote. And one of the arguments, and again, it is a legitimate argument, but I think a fixable one, is if you believe the argument from the Republicans, in some cases, it would require you to go re-register to vote by showing proof of citizenship. And that's one of the complaints that some Republicans have. The Democratic complaint really isn't that. If they were smart, they would make it that, if that's a real complaint. What the problem is the Democratic complaint is that no one should have to show photographic ID to vote. I want you to listen to this exchange on Struggle Session on CNN between Scott Jennings and Struggle Session interlocutor Abby Phillips and some Democratic consultant.
Disenfranchise black voters. It's a lot of people of color.
How?
There are so many civil rights organizations that have run the data. If we look at the way that it is going to disenfranchise black voters, it's the same reason why Chuck Schumer called it Jim Crow 2.0.
So,
this is the same president. If we want to continue.
You haven't said how yet.
I am talking about it. It's the way that you're putting new poll taxes on this when you're making people have. That's what we can call them now. It's kind of an idiom, right? If you want to say that people have to prove that they are citizens, that they have to prove with a voter ID, the reality is you're layering what is a constitutional right for the American people and making it harder for people to vote in this country, and it's going to disenfranchise black voters.
Concern you that you're making all these claims? You've yet to lay out how it's hurting anyone, but 76% of black voters think we should show an ID to vote, 80% of Hispanic voters, 83% of the American people. Are you saying that black voters are too dumb to know what's good for them? I mean, it sounds pretty condescending to me.
That's not
You get three-quarters of black voters who want voter ID.
But to be clear, the SAVE Act is not just about IDs. The SAVE Act is about proof of citizenship.
So what?
So it doesn't.
It also makes it very hard for married women who.
I was just going to say.
Married women are going to do that. They can't answer. Abby Phillips, yet again in the Struggle Session, has to jump in. But Scott. They really should name her show But Scott. He makes perfect sense. It's wild to me that they actually can't defend it. Their position that they it's a poll tax. It's not a poll tax. A poll tax was when you were required to pay money to vote. Showing your ID, which everyone has, is not a poll tax. You know, if it's a tax, if showing your ID is a constitutional burden to your right to vote, well, you know what? The right to vote doesn't actually exist in the Bill of Rights. The right to vote does not exist in the Bill of Rights. Democrats haven't actually thought about their position here. Let me explain the Democratic position to you if they were actually thinking about this instead of emoting. The right to vote does not exist in the Bill of Rights. In fact, not everyone has a right to vote. You know what is in the Bill of Rights is your right to keep and bear arms, which is an individual right. If showing an ID infringes your supposed constitutional right to vote, showing an ID then infringes your constitutional right to keep and bear arms. I saw someone the other day make that point. You can't burden someone's constitutional right by making them show an ID. It's like, okay, let's get rid of the ID requirements for owning guns because that's actually in the Bill of Rights. It's actually the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. In the Bill of Rights, there is no right to vote. In the Constitution, there is a right to vote. In the Bill of Rights, the very Second Amendment to the Constitution, the founders thought it was so important they put in a right to keep and bear arms. And if you Democrats are telling me that showing an ID to vote is an infringement on your constitutional right to vote, well, then it sure as hell is an infringement on my right to keep and bear arms that I got to show a legitimate ID in order to buy a gun under the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution. But you're not suddenly going to walk back that argument either. You don't care about the consistency of it. And you have no idea how any of this stuff actually works, do you? See, here's the problem, and this is the real problem for the Democratic donor class and the Democratic pundits on TV, is that every American, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, knows how often they are required to show a photo ID. You want to get on a plane in this country? You got to show an ID. You got to have a real ID in this country. To think that 70 to 80% of people in Pennsylvania aren't flying, the statistics say otherwise, which means they must have real IDs because you have to have a real ID now to get on a plane in this country. And if you don't have an ID, maybe you have a passport. You can show that too with your right. It's your right to vote. They don't actually care about the facts. This is another 80-20 issue that they're wrong on. The House now has passed the SAVE Act. My friend Congressman Chip Roy, running to be the Attorney General of Texas, he made himself a viral video last night.
Hey everybody, it's Chip Roy from Texas 21, and I'm outside of the House of Representatives, outside of the U.S. Capitol, where we just passed the Save America Act. Simple legislation, as you know, to guarantee that only American citizens vote in American elections and that we present voter ID at the polls. It was on a bipartisan basis. We had a Democrat join us, so now it heads to the Senate. So the question now is whether the Senate will take it up, and I hope they will take it up, but not just take it up and press the rules of the Senate to force members of the Senate onto the floor and to debate. And go ahead and tell the American people why you don't support common sense legislation, or maybe you do. We've already had Senator Fetterman, a Democrat, say, hey, I don't have a problem with voter ID. So let's put it on the floor of the Senate, force the debate. I want to thank Senator Mike Lee, my fellow sponsor in the Senate. I introduced the bill in the House. I want to thank Brian Stile, the chairman, Speaker Mike Johnson, Leader Steve Scalise, our entire team. And I really hope that the Senate will move this bill. It's important for the United States. Let's get it done.
That's Congressman Chip Roy. Those of you in Texas should be voting for him for Attorney General, by the way. This moves to the Senate. There aren't votes in the Senate to scrap the filibuster. And the Democrats know it and the Republicans know it. There aren't enough Republicans who want to kill the filibuster. And killing the filibuster would be a terrible idea. And stop telling me the Democrats are going to do it if they get it back, because they haven't done it. When they had control, they haven't done it. It's the Justification Act. Well, the other side is going to do it, so we might as well do it. You don't actually have proof. You have feeling. You are emoting just like the Democrats are emoting when you say that. It's emotional. It's not logical. It's not fact-based. It's not reason-based. It is your emotion, and you are convinced it's fact because it's emotion. You're just being a little ninny about it. But what the Republicans could do is they could actually have a filibuster. That's the rule in the Senate, is actually that you talk. And every single member in the United States Senate gets to talk as long as they want to talk. So long as they are standing and not leaning on the furniture to stay standing, they can stand and talk for as long as they want. And once every single member in the United States Senate who has wanted to speak speaks, then they call the vote. Everybody in the Senate gets one time to speak. And they get to speak for as long as they possibly want. And the way the filibuster works, if you've ever seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, is you get to stand and speak for as long as you want, and someone can come up and say, I'd like to ask the senator a question, and you yield for the question, and then that Democrat speaks for 24 hours and then yields back to you. And as long as you've been standing there not leaning on the furniture, you've just been resting your voice, you can pick up speaking, and the cycle repeats. And that's why the Republicans don't want to do the speaking filibuster, is because they have a bunch of judges they want to confirm, and they have a bunch of other confirmations and legislation they want to pursue. And this would grind the Senate to a halt for weeks, a month. Do it. Make them go through it. Grind the Senate to the halt. But they don't want to, because senators are old and lazy too. So the Senate Republicans foresee a day where they're in the minority, and they've made the Democrats do a talking filibuster, and they're like, poor old Chuck Grassley, he's like 100 years old. We can't have him standing and talking for 24 hours. That would kill him. So they don't want to do it to the Democrats, because the Democrats would do it to them. The Democrats wouldn't get rid of the filibuster. The Democrats would force a talking filibuster. I think it's time to force the talking filibuster. If the SAVE Act is that big of a deal, do the talking filibuster. But you're not going to get buy-in from the Republicans in the Senate to do that. They want to confirm judges. They know that the time is running out before the midterms. They want to go campaign. The clock is running out. So this is dead in the United States Senate. So now I think this should be a campaign issue for the GOP. It's an 80-20 issue, and it just adds to the point of how far left the Democrats are these days. This is Harry Itten, the data expert on CNN.
The results from that special election, that Democratic primary in the 11th district in New Jersey, speak to a larger point within the Democratic Party, and that is that the far left is significantly more powerful than they once were. This sort of gives the game away here. Democrats who identify as very liberal or conservative. You know, there used to be a lot of conservative Democrats, right? Back in 1999, 26% of Democrats self-identified as conservative. Just 5% said that they were very liberal. It was a smidgen. Now that far left has gained considerably in power. Look at this. Now we're talking about a fifth of Democrats. 21% say they're very liberal. That conservative part of the Democratic Party, adios amigos, goodbye, just 8%. And when you combine the 21% who are very liberal with those who say that they're somewhat liberal, we're talking about 3 in 5 Democrats who identify as either somewhat liberal or very liberal, with the very liberals a much larger portion of the party. The far left, which used to just be a smidgen within the Democratic Party, has gained considerable power, as you saw in New Jersey's 11th district.
What about Democratic socialists, like the likes of, you've got Bernie Sanders or Zoran Mandani here in New York City? Where does that line up?
Okay, so on a separate question where you essentially, CNN asked this last year, which was, okay, Democrats who think of themselves as democratic socialists, among all Democrats, including those independents who lean towards the Democratic Party, look at this. We're talking about a third of all Democrats who identify as democratic socialists. Bernie Sanders and Zoran Mandani are not alone. They are a considerable part of the Democratic base at this point. And more than that, if you look at Democrats under the age of 35, they are nearly half of the Democratic Party. Look at this. 42% of Democrats think of themselves as democratic socialists under the age of 35, just like Zoran Mandani. What happened in New York City is not some aberration, right? It is not something that just happened in New York City. It is something that we are seeing grow within the Democratic Party at this particular point, when we're talking about 42% of Democrats under the age of 35 identifying as democratic socialists, and a third of all Democrats. My goodness gracious.
So if the ideology of the Democratic Party is shifting or changing, how are people feeling about it?
Okay, so we're talking about the Democratic base, right? But what about all Americans, right? How about all voters? Voters who say the Democrats are now too liberal. Look at this percentage. It was 42% in 96, 48% in 2013, now 58% in 2025 of all voters say that the Democratic Party is too liberal.
58% of all voters say the Democratic Party is too liberal now. They oppose deportations. 70% of Americans support deportations. They oppose voter ID. 80% of Americans support voter ID. They oppose Israel. 65% of voters support Israel. They oppose taking out Iran. 55% of voters support taking out Iran. They oppose strong incarceration and sentencing rules. 60% of voters support strong incarceration and sentencing rules. The Democrats continue to move further and further left away from the American public. If the Republicans want to win in November, the collection of these 80-20 issues on which the Democrats oppose, including voter ID, are ripe for the campaign trail if the GOP can focus on that message. Don't make it about Trump, because the majority of voters don't like Trump. Make it about the issues that voters support that the Democrats don't. And you can mitigate what's otherwise probably going to come. This hour of the program brought to you by Van Allen Golf. Check them out on Instagram at Van Allen Golf, or go to vanallengolf.com and text golf, GOLF, to 33777. I'm hanging out with the Van Allen Golf team tonight, and their golf equipment is top-notch. If you're interested in upgrading your putter, let me recommend their blade putter. Incredible. I got the bronze face on mine. You can get the carbon steel one. It's a little lighter. I like the weight of the bronze one. Perfectly balanced putter, vanallengolf.com. All right, we got more and more. However, we have some breaking news here. The Judge Boasberg has ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the return of more than 100 men removed from the country last year without notice or hearing. The plaintiffs have and are allowed to submit habeas petitions from abroad, he says. Now, interesting that the Supreme Court of the United States has said you don't have the authority to compel the president to bring people in from out of the country. Boasberg doesn't seem to care about the Supreme Court precedent here. And I think he is trying to amplify sob stories to help the Democrats in November. That tends to be what so much of it is. 877-973-7425. I'll take phone calls in the next hour. Right now, I need to tell you about Swiss America and their free report on the secret war on cash. They're a trusted leader in precious metals for over 40 years. I am one of their clients. Actually, I have bought gold coins from them. And their report breaks down what's happening with global currencies, debt, and why hard assets like silver and gold are back in focus. You can call or text my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646 to get your free copy. And by the way, you can check them out on YouTube at Swiss America Trading. They got a great podcast on YouTube. It's a great source to explain with no nonsense spin the insights about the BRICS and global power shifts and industry leaders. You go to YouTube and look for Swiss America Trading, or call or text my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. You can just text my name. You don't even have to talk to them, and they'll send you a link. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK, and you can sign up with Swiss America, get that report for free, get educated on the secret war on cash, or just call them at 800-289-2646 or text my name to that number. Message and data rates may apply.